Welcome this evening. My name is Maureen Meredith. I am the Plan Amendment Case Manager for case NPA 2020-0021.02. Please let us know who you are in the chat box. I see that people are already doing that. Share more information about yourself. Well, actually, there was a URL in the chat box, but it wasn't working, so I took it out until we could fix that. But as long as you're giving information about yourself in the chat box, it will be recorded as well. We ask that you mute your microphone if you're joining by phone. So how to participate today. The speech bubble in the menu bar at the bottom of your screen will open the chat box where you can type your questions at any time. After the presentation, you can click on the raise hand icon to be called on to speak, and you can see where the red circle is, the raised hand. Mark will be calling on people as they raise their hand. So tonight we are going to introduce all the staff, the applicants, and the agents who are participating in tonight's meeting. So as I said earlier, my name is Maureen Meredith. I am the Plan Amendment Case Manager. You've already met Mark Walters. If you'd like to introduce yourself again, and then we'll go to Micah and any other applicant or agent who's participating.
Well, good evening. I'm Mark Walters with the Housing and Planning Department. And Maureen, you might want to go to the full screen on the presentation.
Okay.
And I'll be moderating tonight's questions. We'll first kind of go to the questions that might get asked during the presentations. Then following those questions, we'll take people as best we can in the order that they raise their hand. So with that, Micah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Micah King. I'm an attorney at Hesh Blackwell here in Austin, and I'm here to represent the applicant in this case, and look forward to talking with you all about this.
Okay. Is that it then?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on. So again, I'm Maureen. I'm managing the Plan Amendment case. Kate Clark is the zoning planner. She is handling the zoning case. She's not participating tonight. We can try to answer any zoning questions that you have as best as we can. If we can't answer them, we can make note of it and get back to everyone by posting the question and answer to the speakupboston.org NPA website. And it was the website that was on the meeting notice that you received in the mail. So the agenda tonight, I'll go over a little bit more about the application, go over some guidelines for the group discussion, how to participate in the process, why there is a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. Then we'll go into the applicant's presentation. Then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. So again, as you know, this is in the East Riverside Old Torf Combined Planning Area in the Riverside area. Property address is 1100 Manlove Street, 0.36 acres. There's the Plan Amendment case number, NPA 2020-0021.02. Project name is 1100 Manlove Street. The request is to change the future land use map from single family to neighborhood mixed use. This is the zoning case number, C14 2020-0081. The request is to change the zoning from single family 3 neighborhood plan to neighborhood office MU neighborhood plan for multifamily and commercial uses. I'm sorry, that is wrong. I need to correct that. That was from a previous case. For administrative and business offices, I apologize for that. There we have the property owner and the agent. So the guideline for group discussions, due to the need for social distancing, in-person questions and comments have been moved to this online format. Everyone will be allowed to speak this evening. We ask that you listen respectfully and actively, to criticize ideas and not individuals, to commit to learning, not debating, avoid blame, speculation, inflammatory language, avoid assumptions about others, especially based on their perceived social group, and staff reserves the right to delete offensive language and remove offenders from the meeting. We have to say so far we have not had any problems with the participants in our meetings. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. After the staff and applicant presentations, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking in the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session of the meeting. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then the staff will open the floor to answer questions in the chat or by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversation. If you're having connection to
Maureen, you're
ask
cutting out. You're
questions.
cutting out again.
Yeah, I'm getting the notification on my computer that it's bad network quality.
Okay, just letting you know.
So I will continue and hopefully it will clear up. So how to participate in this process. If you have questions after this meeting, they will be answered and made available by request within 5 business days on the website. You can always email or call the case manager for any questions or comments you'd like to add. If you're providing written comments, we can add them to the staff case reports. You will get a notice in the mail of the meeting date and time of the Planning Commission and City Council public hearings if you live within 500 feet. The notice will describe how to participate in the public hearing process. So why is there a neighborhood plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. City Charter requires zoning changes be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most NPAs are amendments to the future land use map, and most NPAs have associated zoning change applications. So this map shows in blue the areas that have City Council approved neighborhood plans, most of which have a future land use map. So a future land use map looks like this. This is the East Riverside Old Torf neighborhood plan. And these colors represent broad land uses. For example, yellow represents single family, pink office, brown mixed use, orange multifamily, purple industrial, for example. So in this application, the existing zoning is SF3 and the land use is yellow. The proposed zoning is neighborhood office mixed use. And the proposed land use is neighborhood mixed use, which is the brown with the white dots. So this is an aerial photo that shows the property. This is just a Google map that shows some surrounding uses to the north. We have the future land use map that shows the land use is yellow, which is single family. The properties to the north are within the East Riverside corridor plan, and that light green with white dots is the specific regulating district land use. This is the zoning map, which shows the zoning as SF3 and P. To the west, you have GRMU. To the north, the East Riverside corridor zoning. This map shows the property in relation to the growth concept map of the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan that is located within the Riverside Station Activity Center and just south of the East Riverside Drive Activity Corridor. So
I'm sorry, how do I
that
see this?
ends my presentation.
Hello?
I just have a phone number. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Is there a place to be able to see this?
Well, once the meeting is over, it'll be posted online at the website the address that you received in the mail notice.
I just got a phone number. I didn't see an address, but
Well, if you could, well,
yeah. So I'm sorry. I don't mean to derail the whole call. I just
no, real quick. Hold on. Well, if you can contact, do you have a pen and paper?
Yep.
Maureen, can you give him your office phone so he can call you tomorrow and you can give him all the information where everything's going to be?
Sure. 512-974-2695.
Thanks so much.
And sir, this will probably be up within 5 business days, probably middle of next week. This meeting will be posted. So
Great. Thanks so much. Sorry for interrupting.
no, it's okay. I get it. It's kind of hard to see visuals over the phone.
Right.
So Micah, I guess you're up.
So
All right.
Micah, you can share.
There we go.
You can
Can you see
share
me?
your screen now, Micah.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Maureen and Mark, for facilitating this meeting and for all the neighbors for being here. I know we have some things to work through, but believe it or not, meeting with neighbors is one of the favorite parts of my job. I represent the applicant in this case, and I've seen some of your concerns already, and so I want to briefly address some of those, hopefully, and go through what our plans are for the property. And then really what I want to do today is listen to everybody and hear what your concerns are and try to address those and go back to the client and see what we can do. The property owner, I think it's been there for 15 years and has tried to be a good neighbor and really does want to work with everybody to be a good neighbor. And so we're here today to try to, of course, ask for your support, but really try to find some sort of way that we can live together in harmony. I have a very brief presentation, and I'm going to pull that up if I can. Let's see, 1 second. And if anybody has questions, feel free to interrupt me. I'm happy to do that, or we can do it at the end. Okay, let's see. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
It's like, okay, all right. So first of all, I want to talk about the plans for the property. So the plans for the property are to have an administrative office that would be serving the existing business that's down the hill on Riverside Drive. I know some of the major concerns include parking and traffic and that sort of thing, which is completely understandable, right? And so number one, we are not proposing any driveway through the end of the residential street. We don't want that. We're willing to agree to prohibit that. And we're not going to be having parking on the residential street either. We have sufficient parking down below, and it doesn't make sense for us to invite visitors to the office to do that. And like I said, the structure on the property that we're talking about will be to serve the office workers. This is not where clients will be met, and so we're not seeing this as an intensive use. I do want to go over the site development regulations. I think it's really important because I know before I started doing zoning work, I thought, these zoning categories, when you start to talk about commercial, like the NO neighborhood office that we're requesting, can sound like it would allow for something pretty intensive. The reality is when you start digging into what's actually allowed under the zoning, there's not that much different in terms of the site development regulations. And in fact, so the property, as you know, is zoned single family 3 right now. And under the proposed zoning, some of those restrictions would become more strict. And so I want to draw your attention to, I know you can read, but I want to draw your attention to a couple of things. And there's some sort of, there, that's what's blocking me. So in terms of let's talk about height. So under SF3, we currently have 35 feet. Under the proposed zoning, it would be 35 feet or 2 stories. When we talk about setback requirements, so 25 feet from the front and 15 feet from the street side yard, no change. Or actually be an interior side yard, I'm sorry. So 5 feet to 5 feet, same thing. Rear yard, not as important to you all probably because of the rear being away from you all, but that would go down by 5 feet from 10 to 5. SF3 and NO is designed to serve a neighborhood, and under the planning principles of the city, it is appropriate for placement within a neighborhood. And so we think it's a very conservative request. There are a lot more intensive zoning categories that are commercial under the city code. This is the least intensive. And so we're really just trying to be able to put this house that hasn't been really put to very good use for the past couple of years, to allow it to serve the employees of John's business. 2 other things, I really only have 2 more slides. So this one, compatibility standards, which I know some of you are familiar with. The single family residential properties on the sides and all around would trigger compatibility standards. So these are going to further restrict what could be constructed on the property. Because there's more than 100 feet of frontage on the property, is subject to the compatibility standards for large sites. And what that means is that any structure, let's say, and the client is not planning this, if the client were to demolish the structure and build a new one, it would have to be 25 feet from the front. It would have to be 25 feet from the property lines of the adjacent property owners on either side. There would also be screening requirements. There would be a requirement for off-street parking to be screened. Any lighting, exterior lighting, would have to be shielded and full cutoff as seen from an SF3 property. And there would be noise restrictions on mechanical noise and restrictions on the issuance of any sound permits, which we don't even have any plans for, but I did want to mention that. Now, the way around compatibility standards, which we're not planning on taking advantage of, is through the affordability and locked density bonus program that the city council approved not too long ago. Now, under the existing SF3 zoning, a developer, and again, I'm getting the cart before the horse, but a developer could, or the current owner, could redevelop that property and take advantage of the density bonus without any zoning change. With that density bonus program, if they satisfied the affordability requirements, they could provide 6 to 8 units, depending on the level of affordability. Compatibility standards would be waived except for the side setback requirements. There would be no maximum floor area ratio. And you could actually go 1.25 to 1.5 times the maximum height. So you could actually go taller under SF3 than you could under the proposed NO zoning. That's all I have. There's some questions that I saw from some of you that I would be happy to address. But first I want to open it up to you all and see and go from there. So I promise to be brief.
Don't need to speak over you there, Mike. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand, and we have a question from a gentleman, Ron. Ron, can you unmute yourself and ask your question? I'll unmute you. How's that? Okay, you're on. I guess I can't unmute you, Ron, so you need to, oh. Let me try one more time. So, well, Ron, you can figure out how to unmute yourself. It's pretty easy. Just hit the microphone button. And for the time being, I'm going to go to Adria Escalante. If you could unmute Adria and ask your question.
Yes, hi. Ron is actually sitting here next to me, and I think you guys kept muting and unmuting each other. So
Sorry. It's a learning process.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So I don't know if this is the time to kind of voice our opinions, but I do have a couple of questions. That last slide that you showed is really where where my concerns lie. I feel like it's dangerous because we know that Mr. Schuler, I think that's how you pronounce it, has tried to sell this property bundle in the past and really has wanted to sell it to someone who could utilize that Manlove property. My concerns are really that it's setting a precedent to all around the city to replace single family residences with offices and administrative buildings. And I wonder why he doesn't expand or redevelop his existing commercial property instead of using this home, because there's plenty of room down there. And from my perspective, it appears that people are living there in that commercial property. I also wonder why not move them to the house, or why not have him and his children who work there work in the house and work from home, quote unquote, to free up some space if that's really the intention. Again, those are my questions, not my concerns. But if this is now just question time and not concern time, I will stop there and let you answer the questions.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, and valid questions. And of course, and please feel free to mention questions or concerns all at once or however you want to do it. So as far as to why not redevelop the existing property below, well, I think that's a really big financial decision, especially in these times. And why not take advantage of what's already existing, rather than spending millions of dollars on that? Yes, there might be room below, but that's not part of the plan to redevelop it. And when you talk about this being part of an overall larger plan to just sell the property, I mean, I can't predict the future. All I know is what are the clients and the applicants' intentions right now, and they're not to do that. I can promise you that it is not cheap to go through this process. The application fee is expensive. All of the legal fees are expensive, and so he would not be going through this process for no reason. It's just to do it again 6 months later. But I hear what you're saying about it being a slippery slope, but I just don't think that when you really look into the economics of it in terms of his business, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then as far as the number of employees, I saw let me go back. You had a question, is it Adria, about the affordable housing? And I didn't catch all of that. Could you remind me about that? Sorry.
Yeah, I just feel like it's sort of setting things up for, I don't want to speculate. It could set things up for that property, which is directly across the street from my house. And by the way, that he owns property on 3 sides of my house. It really opens up the possibility for him to sell that property, and a developer could come in and redevelop that into something very different than what you are talking about. Also, even if this does go through, he himself could redevelop that into an office building, which changes the look and feel of the neighborhood. And as much as he'd like to say he wouldn't use it for parking, he already does. His employees already park there. People already come down that street. It's dangerous for kids and people jogging and walking and it's a dead end street. So all in all, I'm just very much against that, considering that there is so much opportunity for him to expand his business in the space that he already has. I don't understand why he wants to take this home and turn it into an office. I do understand. I know why he does, because he's our neighbor. We know exactly what the plan is, but I just don't feel like it's appropriate. And I don't know if anyone else wants to raise their hand now, but hopefully that answered your question.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
The next person in line who popped up on my screen here is Kim Pitalak. If you would unmute Kim and ask your question.
Hi there. We've been living in the neighborhood for about like 13 and a half, 14 years now. A number of years back, a man came in and built like a duplex, I guess, and it was brought to our attention as he was trying to sell it that that the neighborhood actually had like a clause against building any more multifamily houses, and as a result, like he went door to door, and that clause was overturned. And while I, definitely support like having, especially even housing that is not going to be affected by the changing prices in the neighborhood, what it has done is it has allowed a bunch of developers to come in and buy houses, tear them down, and then put up under the loophole condo clause a multi-unit house that, it's very obtrusive. Like they storm into the neighborhood and they like tear a house down, and the gentleman across the street told us he was going to condo the shit out of that lot, and kind of just get away with like this loophole that they found. So it feels a little, I think like my concern is that this feels like it is like the first step to something even bigger than that, because there's only 17 employees listed on LinkedIn at this company, and they have 2 gigantic houses on that lot, and it's a 5-acre lot. And I don't understand how they could need another property.
Yeah, so I hear your question. So I don't know how many employees he actually has, whether they're all listed on the website or not. I will ask them about that. I mean, I saw some people saying, well, he's lying about wanting more space for his employees. I don't have any reason to doubt that. And when you talk about 2 things about, I mean, I hear you that there are, scrupulous people out there, these people you mentioned trying to build a bunch of units on one lot. That's not part of the plan. Duplex is already allowed under single family zoning, but that's not what he wants to do. In terms of him owning properties that are adjacent to the rear along the riverside or I-35, we're not rezoning that. That is what it is, and what could be developed there today is staying this. This does not affect that. And if you're rezoning the property to NO, neighborhood office, those other sites don't affect what you can be building under NO. So I actually think that NO provides a little more certainty, and he is not a developer. He's not in the affordable housing business. This is a neighborhood office. But I hear your concerns. I mean, it's always a trust issue, and we have to earn that with you. And so, we will do what we can to address those concerns. I hear you.
Well, and let me just say one last thing. I think I don't know anything about him, but I guess he may be, this may just be his business, and it is his legacy that he's leaving, and he really wants to grow his own business. But should he decide to retire at some point or change office locations. I'm just a little nervous because when you go back from what the existing documentation or rules are, when you shift what current restrictions are in place, you know, there can be implications for that down the road that aren't necessarily considered, and perhaps he does sell his property that would now be like closer to 6 acres for, you know, a substantial sum to a condo developer who is like, okay, well, this is kind of slightly shifted towards something that's a little closer to, you know, like a condo sort of development, and it's less work for them to do to take it to that final step.
Yeah, that's a good question. Or point. So that is a common, point that gets raised is what about the next owner? And my answer to that, just to give background, I hope I'm not talking down. I'm just, I don't know what everybody knows, but what can be built in terms of size under NO zoning is, at the end of the day, less than what you can build currently. And a future owner cannot change that without rezoning. It is not impacting what they can build on the rest of the site. And so I understand, this is a quality of life issue and these concerns are valid, but I think when you really apply the land development code and all of the strict restrictions that come with what you can do with a property, that I don't honestly see a big concern. You're not going to get more square height. You're not going to get closer to the residential properties on the side. And so whether somebody's living there or sitting in an office there, I hope wouldn't, impact or disrupt your life. But I mean, if you think it would be, like, we want to provide safeguards that everybody can find reasonable, like restricting access, and even putting up, evergreen hedges, if that's what you want. We're very open to doing what we can to address these concerns because they're real. And so I thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, the next person who's raised their hand is Dave Snow. I see you're already unmuted, so Dave, please ask your question.
Yes, hi. Again, my name's Dave Snow. I own the land a couple of blocks away, 1506 Lupine Lane. I know back in 2012, Mr. Schuler came forth and wanted to change the zoning of this lot. And the reason had nothing to do with the Time Warner business. My understanding at the time was that he needed the back 1/3 of this lot to be rezoned. In fact, that was his compromise proposal when the neighborhood objected to changing the whole lot. He wanted the back 1/3 chopped off. The reason being that he controls all the land along Riverside to Summit. He also controls the land, I understand, on IH-35 going down to the alleyway behind Inglewood. And that this little 1/3 of the lot on the northwest corner juts out into the land that he controls. His plan at the time, you say he's not a developer, but the plans, which are still posted out on the city websites, his plan was to put a 3 to 4 story multi-use building going along IH-35, curving all the way around to Summit. And he needed that 1/3 of the backside of 1100 Manlove, excuse me. He needed that chunk to be zoned in such a way that he could put an exit from the multi-use area into the IH-35 feeder road going north. And this was all discussed 8 years ago in a big meeting, and I think Mr. Schuler actually attended that meeting. Now, maybe his plans aren't that anymore, but those were his plans at that point in time. And so I guess my question to you is whether has he even told you of that situation in 2012? Because I know you're new to this whole thing. You weren't around in 2012. Your predecessor was, and he left and you just showed up. So Schuler talked with you about that. And if he did he give you assurances that he has no plans for developing that land along Riverside and IH-35? And again, I point out, the plans are still posted out on one of the city planning sites.
So, okay, great questions. So yes, we did discuss it briefly, and I've looked at some of those records on the city website, and a couple of things. So that zoning case failed, right? It never was approved by the city council.
No, actually, he chose to remove it. It didn't fail. He chose, after the neighborhood complained, to remove it. It never went to the planning commission, nor did it go to the city council.
Right. So given the neighborhood opposition, he withdrew that case. And so it was never approved by council. He's not trying to revisit what he did 8 years ago. I don't think he wants to go through that again. He's proposing something very much more conservative. And we have not had any discussion about rezoning the back third of that lot. And in fact, if you only rezone the back third of the lot, that wouldn't include the house. So he couldn't use it for an administrative office if he did that, I hear there's history there, but it's just, I know you have to look at history to try to divine somebody's intent, but if that was intent, he would not be wanting to get the house rezoned. You see what I'm saying? So I hope that makes sense.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I have heard from other neighbors a long history over 20 years of Schuler proposing things, committing to things, not fulfilling his commitments. Things such as reusing this house as an office, even when he legally couldn't do it, and the city had to come in and slap his hands about it. What I don't understand is why he simply doesn't refurbish the house. He could make a whole lot of money off of refurbishing a nice house on a big plot of land in a single family area, and he wouldn't have the neighborhood asking why he wants to put a business building, an office building, at the end of the path to get to it is Summit to Inglewood to Manlove, and none of those have any commercial activities. It's only when you get to the far end of Manlove, the last lot, he wants to change it. And so it seems to me that there's a history there that you may not fully understand, but which the neighborhood fully does. And the history is not good when looked at in terms of whether you can really trust. I don't want to get personal on this. Whether there are grounds to believe that the applicant won't come back at a later date and try to do something more.
Yeah. I hear concerns about the future. I cannot predict the future. All I know is what I know right now. And
all we know is what we know now, and we know the past.
Right. Talking about, I think you mentioned adding a business office there. We're not talking about demolishing the existing structure. We're talking about taking out some beds that aren't being used and putting in some desks. And in terms of how do people access the site, well, they access the site from the parking area below. And it sounds like I've had some concerns about people, and I think he even told me, he's like, yeah, sometimes, you know, I've parked in my driveway of the house to get down below, and I know some of the neighbors. And I don't think he's the only one in the neighborhood who's used that before. I'm not quite sure. I haven't been there, but you know, I think you have to look at this in what we're asking. And what we're asking is to put in an office in an existing structure without any ingress or egress for vehicles through the residential neighborhood. Somebody
Once you get the zoning change, he could then tear it down and build a new building. You just pointed that out in your presentation.
Yes, absolutely he could. And anybody in the neighborhood could tear down their single family home, take advantage of the affordability unlocked ordinance, and build 6 to 8 units on that property. So
you're absolutely correct, but no one else is really doing that. Schuler is the one who is proposing this.
He's not proposing to do that. And rezoning it to office shows he's not wanting to do that. Because if he wanted to do that, he wouldn't rezone it. He wouldn't spend the money to rezone it if he was going to take advantage of affordability unlock and create all of these new residential units. So I think at the end of the day, this rezoning actually provides more certainty to the neighbors. I know it doesn't sound like that, but it really does when you talk about what can be developed.
Well, I guess it comes down to trust, and I'll just leave it at that at this point in time and let someone else ask their questions.
I hear you, but I think it also comes down to what are the site development regulations. It doesn't require trust to say what can be developed in their current code and what could be developed under the future zoning. So,
okay. Next person who has their hand raised up is Chris Cavello, but we're gonna have 3 people here with their hands up, and after that, there's a bunch of questions that have been piling up in the chat. So we'll go through these 3 questions. Be Chris Cavello, Rachel McClure, and Ron, and then we'll go to address the questions in the chat. So, Chris, would you please ask your question?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks. It's the Italian Cavello, not the Latin Cavello. Thanks for the time. I'll just say this to everyone has to always, consider what can be done there and not what's being planned now. When Mr. Schuler was turning the single family properties behind our homes right now, he had development plans. I don't really care what it was. I always look at what it could be. So a question I have is, can you put dumpsters on this kind of property?
So
zoning.
Well, there wouldn't. So no, there are very strict compatibility standards that apply due to the residential properties in the area. Restrict, number one, the placement of a dumpster, but also, why would there be the need for one?
For when this is some other person's property and they make a lot of waste and they need a dumpster.
Right.
Can that type of commercial property have a dumpster?
But I don't think that you're hearing me that the size of a future structure could not be that much, if any, larger than a single family home that somebody could redevelop.
Okay, so, all right, you didn't answer the question. I just asked yes or no, can you put a dumpster on that property? If it's that kind of commercial property.
Yeah, I will double check for you.
Okay. Can I be a tattoo consultant and and do tattooing at this property if it's a commercial if it's this type of commercial property?
Not under neighborhood office. No.
Why not?
There's a list of permitted uses for each zoning category.
Okay, so the reason that I think most people here's hair is up is because it seems highly unlikely that he actually needs that space, in our opinion, and not everybody's opinion, but in many people's opinion. I believe that this is a play to basically move it closer to commercial, because if we all look at that map, you'll see that the two properties that he has a very significant pinch point. And that pinch point really restricts, he wants to sell this property. I know it's for sale. I know that he was having negotiations with foundation communities just this past year. He wants to sell this property, and that's his right, and I have no concern with that. But it's a very, very difficult property to develop because of for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons is that it's bifurcated by this jutting out piece of property. And I think what we're very concerned with is that, well, first of all, we don't really want a commercial property on the end of a dead end street. Can't understand why, because that, I think one of the other descriptions of these kind of things is that it's close to or part of a larger urban, or commercial strip area and stuff like that, or close to it. But I think that a big concern that a lot of us have is that when the future developer that John will sell this property to says, oh, well, okay, I'm going to build this incredible building and I'm going to have all the services in the back, and I'm going to have garbage trucks going down in there, or I'm going to have an entrance to a parking garage or whatever. So it just makes people worried that the house that we bought on a quiet dead end street, well, not quiet, but low traffic dead end street, is going to end up becoming another access to the commercial property. And it doesn't matter what anybody's, in my opinion, it doesn't matter what anybody's promises are. It's what can be done. So this just feels like it's sliding towards that. John has also already turned a number of single family properties into this larger commercial property. And shortly after that, he bought the house from the fellow that lived there with the intent, I'm sure, not to make it part of his office, but to somehow merge it into his property. So that's what we're the most concerned with. So, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but a lot of people.
No.
So I think that's fairly clear, and that's why we're concerned.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I haven't talked to John about this, but you mentioned how do we ensure certain things don't happen, like entrance to a parking garage or dumpster placement, and parking and access. So those things, number one, I will pull together those code provisions that regulate them or restrict them where they do. And then for those things that don't, there's always a possibility of a restrictive covenant. Those run with the land, meaning that anytime the property gets sold, those restrictions apply to the next owner and the next owner and the next owner. So I don't know if he'd be willing to do that, but yes, there are ways to enshrine these agreements. So you don't have to take mine or his word for it. We make it part of the law. So let me see if there's anything that you would be interested in that he would be willing to agree to, if it's not already controlled by the Land Development Code.
Okay. The next person who has their hand raised is Rachel McClure. So Rachel, if you would unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with us about this plan. As neighbor Dave Snow mentioned, we're a tight-knit community, and so we know what's going on in our neighborhood. And so we're not unfamiliar with the situation. So thank you for taking time to listen to our concerns.
My pleasure.
I guess, one thing I had a question about, just so that I'm clear on what we're talking about. You had made a comment earlier that this proposal provides more certainty for the neighborhood. So if I were going to understand this, basically, me as a homeowner on Lupine, I could do the same thing, right? I could take my home, I could look at the code that you're looking at, create a neighborhood office, and then my neighbors Dave and Mimi and John could then have a neighborhood office across the street. I have all the same rights that Mr. Schuler is trying to use right now, right? I could do that right now with my home.
I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you asking, can you put an office like below?
I'm asking, maybe I'm doing it ineloquently. I'm asking, he has a single family home. So do I. So both of us have the same opportunity to change our homes to this neighborhood office that Mr. Schuler's proposing.
Under zoning, yeah.
Okay, so there's more certainty. That I'm just trying to understand, why is there more certainty for the neighborhood for Mr. Schuler to make this change?
Yeah.
I would offer there is more certainty to the neighborhood for Mr. Schuler to take the single family designation and rent it to a family. That would bring certainty to the neighborhood. We have been waiting for a long time. Excuse me. We have been waiting for a long time for that home to be a home. I walked that neighborhood yesterday. There are cars in the streets. It is incorrect to say that property is not being used as it should be right now. And I would also like to make a comment that it is shocking to me. And of course, it is not my job to know what you do, but that you haven't come to visit our site. I understand it's not your obligation to drive on Manlove. It is not your obligation to see that we don't have sidewalks. It is not your obligation to find how that land is situated and how the barrier to the property below is a wooden fence. So thank you for your time. This seems like a very convenient situation. I was given information, and again, I would like to comment just to the city that, in this situation, the residents 500 feet to this property were notified. More than half of that notification is the IH-35 corridor. Most of the people on Summit were not notified. This directly impacts the people on Summit, and they aren't within the 500 feet. Somebody should have looked at that map and seen that the notification was completely false. It is ridiculous. I'm sorry. We're notifying the folks under the bridge. God bless them. No, thank you. So I was told that we're doing this because of COVID-19. This is a short-term solution for what problem? No, sir. No, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit upset, but this is like the third freaking time that we have to pretend that I don't care about the intentions. You're asking us to consider a legal change to the property. Therefore, anything within that definition is fair game. It's fair game, right? Your narrative is not helpful. Your narrative is not helpful. You're asking us to buy into the whole package. And so thank you, but we need more than just, I've got a huge property and I need to just use this. It's a huge property. If you had come to the property, you would see that it's half the hill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, there's several other people who had their hands up, but these questions in the chat have been lining up. So I'm going to go that, then I'm going to come back to Tony House and Dan Fredine after we go through the chat questions. And those questions may get answered. So
thank you, Mark.
Scroll up here.
Oh, thank you for pointing out the chat comments so I can catch up. Let's see.
Okay, they were really stacking up. So
Yeah. So where should I start? So
I would say from Kim Pedalak, I hope I got the name right, is talking about there's 17 employees on this business, and usually the property looks vacant. Again, I think you've touched on this. I don't understand why they need additional space.
yeah.
This definitely feels like one step to building a large condo, I think.
And I've seen, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt real quick. So, but yeah, just to follow up on that before we move on. So, I saw a couple comments about, you know, does he really need this? And I will meet with him and find out more details about that. And as far as Rachel, I appreciate all your points. The idea about what could be developed on it. I mean, you said that it should be put to use for a home, but it hasn't been. It hasn't been for a reason, because it doesn't make sense for him. And so, if he's not able to use this property for administrative offices, for what purpose would he keep the property? What would stop him from selling it to a developer to do affordable housing with 6 to 8 units? And so when I talk about certainty, that's what I'm talking about. Is we have a person who we know wants to use it for an office because that's what they're applying for, versus if he's not able to use it for an office, like how can I provide any guarantees, or anybody providing guarantees about what a future owner would be using the property for? As far as walking the site, and yes, I'm new to this. The former agent is no longer involved in the case, and so I am playing catch up. And so I will concede that I need to come out to the site. I had a hearing today, and so I didn't get to visit in person, even though I wanted to. I will definitely be at the property this weekend. And if you ever want to socially distance, meet with me outside, I will make myself available whenever is good for you. And that goes for any of the neighbors. So I do want to offer that and acknowledge that.
The next question I think has already been asked in regards to the dumpster. And I think you're going to look into that. I do believe that a dumpster would be allowed, but it would have to be screened somehow. And,
that's my understanding.
And put within the proper setbacks and whatnot. And off the top of my head, I don't know what those numbers are, the distance setbacks for that. Dan Fredine, who's also has his hand up, is asking what does he want to do with the property. And
what time is that?
6:32.
Okay, 6:32. What does he want to do at office? I mean, the zoning we're seeking is neighborhood office.
And I think you've addressed the issue that can you do a tattoo parlor, and tattooing is done under personal services or personal improvement services. One of those two uses is where a tattoo, and I don't think that is not allowed in NO zoning. The next question is from Donna at 6:36. It says, don't want to live someday in the shadow of a large condo complex and have views blocked.
I agree. I don't want that either, and it's not allowed given the compatibility setbacks. So.
And I think Mr. Cavello brought this up. This property sought another zoning change, trying to integrate it into the part of the larger property. I think, do you have anything to add on to that?
I mean, not really. I mean,
okay.
It's not part of. It's a standalone structure, okay. And you can't just take a building that qualifies under the site development regulations of the property zoning to the rear, and then use the same site development regulations under this really restrictive NO zoning. You have to comply with the NO zoning for. If there were to be a new structure, you would have to comply with the NO zoning. Like I said, with the 25-foot rear setbacks on either side, the 25-foot front setback, limiting height to 2 stories and 30 feet within 50 feet of any adjacent residential property, even though today under SF3 zoning, maximum height is 35 feet. So yes,
I'm sorry, I gotta break in here real quick.
Yeah.
This is Ron.
Ron.
There's currently construction going on next door
Okay.
to my house, which we live across the street from this property.
Okay.
And the property next door is currently at a height of 45 feet.
So
there are loopholes where they can exceed the height restrictions. I just
so they
want
must
to
be.
point that out because there's evidence on the street if you come visit. Thank you.
So that would be illegal under an SF3 zoning unless they're taking advantage of affordability unlocked or got a variance from the Board of Adjustment. I don't know the detail. Do you know the address of that property? Or I'll see it this weekend. So
it's 1103.
1103 Manlove, or yeah. Okay, I will see what's going on and why they're building the 45 feet, and I'll report back.
Okay, there's a comment that the developer would not knock the house down in a minute. Ron, that was from Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Ron has, what are the planned changes of the property? I think we've discussed that.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can knock down their house in a minute. So I mean, we don't like to see that. I'd like to see housing and structures preserved and materials reused and preserved. But the zoning really has nothing to do with demolition.
Okay, someone was concerned about the 6 to 8 units you said in reference to affordability unlocked.
That's right. And so, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to go to the next.
So the 6 to 8 units is what's already allowed under the current zoning if there was an affordable housing development that qualified. That's not part of our plans because if it was, we wouldn't be seeking to rezone to neighborhood office. So no, that is not part of our plan, and that's already allowed by ordinance. So this case has nothing to do with allowing that, and it's not part of the plans. Next one, what are the environmental considerations for the heritage tree? So the heritage tree ordinance would apply. It prevents or prohibits removing a heritage tree unless it's dying or posing a threat to a person's health, like falling and striking them. So if it's healthy, it's going to stay there, and beyond that, and we need to order a survey, but the any tree that has to be preserved has a critical root zone that extends out from the tree, and you can think about it just as a rule of thumb, falling below where the edge of the canopy of the tree is. So you can't disturb a certain amount of that critical root zone because you can't harm the tree. So yes, there would be an impact on any potential future development based on that tree. The next one is the turning numerous single-family homes to commercial ones, adjacent properties. I will talk to him about that and try to have more information for you or better understand that so I can understand your concerns. I mean, this neighborhood office is a commercial use, so yes, he's proposing not to use that house as a single family house. It hasn't been used as a single family house in quite a while. So yes, he wants to put it to a use that works for him. And so as far as the next question, and
I think it was an issue of that Mr. Cavello mentioned that it's not what Mr. Schuyler might have in mind now, but what a future person or future plans might be. And that's at 644.
Yeah, so I can't speak to what somebody in the future would want to do with the property. If they're wanting to develop it with something more intensive, they're going to have to rezone it to something more intensive than what we're proposing.
And then the next one goes, what guarantees do they have that the property won't be demolished after the zoning change?
I mean, all I can say is it's not part of the plans right now. And everybody has, anybody can go and seek a demolition permit. And anybody on this call can go and seek that for the house that they own, if they own it. And so I don't know, I mean, I can't provide any guarantee that this house is going to stand X number of years or decades. So I
think there's kind of a follow up to that. Says, what are the guarantees that he's not going to sell it once he might get a zoning change?
I mean, there's no guarantee. I mean, he's not going to enter into a contract to not sell a property. That's not. Somebody mentioned that this is silly and that he wants to develop the crud out of Riverside. That's not what I'm hearing about this lot. And so, again, we will have a conversation about this. But I think you have to separate properties that are adjacent to a very major roadway from a lot that cannot be developed very much under what we're proposing.
Okay, and there's some comments that are, but the next question is from Dean Haraguchi, and he states, I'm concerned that if the zoning is granted, it will increase the marketability of all of his parcels. He could then sell all the parcels together to a developer who could then build a wraparound office building that would obstruct the views of the houses on the hill. Also, why should this one lot be exception? Everything on Inglewood and Manlove is residential.
Yeah, so, I mean, good question. So, as to your first part, building a wraparound office building, the maximum height of this lot is not going to change under the zoning. So whatever obstruction could exist in the future potentially, you know, you can do 2 stories and 30 feet on part of the property within 50 feet of the sides. And so that is true for single family residential. You can go even higher with that if you take advantage of the bonus. So what will happen on an interstate frontage road or a core transit corridor like East Riverside Drive, I think it's just different than what could happen on this lot.
Okay, the next question is from Ron at 652. It says, why do his employees need to work from the office? Is there a need for them to all be there? How much walk-in business do they get? Isn't most of the business conducted by phone? First question. Then the next is, what is the cost difference between renovating the property or providing the employees with a call service at their home number? Wouldn't that be more cost effective? And I don't know if you can answer the second question, but I think
I can't answer the second question, but I mean, how somebody wants to operate their business, I think, is like if they're going to have virtual call centers or having people come in and be able to have camaraderie and see people in real life. I mean, I don't think that's something that we should be dictating. And so, I mean, I hear your question, but I mean, that's just nothing I would ever ask of somebody who owned a business. So,
okay, go ahead.
You want to read the question next?
Yeah, I was going to read it from
help me keep on track. I appreciate that. There's a lot going on
I'll
here.
ask the question so you can respond, so people who don't on chat can't,
Perfect.
who may not be able to see it.
All right, thank you.
So the city will no, this is from Malcolm Yates, and the city will no longer enforce public restrictive covenants. The neighborhood would need to pay a lawyer to enforce a private restrictive covenant. I don't know. I think the city does enforce restrictive covenants when they are party to them, but private restrictive covenants are private contractual agreements between individual property owners and groups, and the city does not enforce private restrictive covenants. They do enforce the public ones because that's how, in just FYI, they agree to certain affordability requirements for the different, like for smart housing, the city will enter into a restrictive covenant to ensure that the affordability periods are being honored. So that's one of the ways that the city does actually enforce public restrictive covenants.
Yeah, that's a perfect answer. And just to add on to that is there's also additional ways to document agreements or restrictions without. So if it's a private restrictive covenant and the neighborhood would have to enforce it, there's also other ways to add requirements that wouldn't require the neighborhood to enforce something. And a really common way to do that is a conditional overlay to the zoning ordinance. And with that, you can require things like a vegetative buffer or restricting the uses that would otherwise be permitted under that zoning category. So like if a tattoo parlor was allowed, then the zoning ordinance could restrict that if that's something that y'all cared about and the client agreed with it. So those are the three ways that we can regulate or provide additional protection.
Okay, some more comments from, it's a single family neighborhood. He knew it when he bought it. I think that point's been made by several of the people asking questions. Someone's saying that you're using the affordability unlocked as a threat.
No, this is, sorry. It is not a threat. Absolutely not. It is to highlight what could and could not be developed currently and in the future. And to highlight the fact that that you can already build something more intensive than what we're proposing. And so I bring that up, and affordability unlocked is city council approved ordinance that is meant to address our severe housing crisis in Austin and our affordability crisis. And so that's a public policy that the city's decided upon. But like I said, it's not what we're seeking to do. It's talking about, some of you mentioned fears about what future owners might do with the property. Well, I'm talking about what this owner wants to do with this property as evidenced by the fact that he's trying to get the zoning for an administrative office.
Okay. Yeah, this question, I'm going to paraphrase it from Adria Escalante. Basically, her concern is that this would set a dangerous precedent for the neighborhood. We're having, excuse me, the commercial at the end of this dead end street. I think so. It sets a dangerous precedent, opens the door for further expansion. We live here. He doesn't. If he wants to live there, great. Otherwise, he can sell it to someone else. So.
Okay.
The next is from Chris Cavello. He is implying with the affordable housing trope that we would be afraid of people who live in affordable housing.
I think I just said that this is a city policy that's intended to address issues. And under no sense am I saying that the owner would have a problem with affordable housing.
Okay. There's a question. I think this is something for Maureen to address. It's from unknown user. They would like to see a list of permitted uses for NO, and that's maybe something we can put up on the website with the case for this case. Just put a short, because the list of NO uses is very short. So we can do that. That'll be up within by probably the middle of next week, probably at the same time that the video for this meeting is up. Was the neighborhood association, South River City citizens notified? I understand that they're
Mark,
yes.
I posted from the notification list in that chat box, the who was notified. So that was answered.
Okay, thank you. Talking about it's true that the affordability unlock does remove compatibility standards. That's from Malcolm Yates. I think the question is, could he, under this proposed change, use that back 1/3 as access to his I-35 frontage?
That is not entirely clear under the code, because what I think you're also I mean, you have restrictions based on curb cuts in a certain proximity to a major intersection, and then this is also a feeder road for an international or interstate highway. So I would have to dig into that further. I'll look that up.
From Dean Haraguchi, the lot is on a steep hill. You could have a low structure like a parking garage entrance that feeds into a much. So I guess that the driveway would would enter from Manlove and to at grade to a parking garage and a building built on the frontage road. I think that's what the statement is. Okay, I think we're getting close to the end of these, and we'll thank you for those people who have their hands raised virtually, of course, and we'll get to you in just a minute. Due to a time check, we have 11 minutes left, thereabouts, Maureen. We can go on. We can go over.
Yeah, so it's 7:20. So yeah, about 10 more minutes.
Okay, again from Adria Escalante. I'm sorry, but we all know that the end game is he has told us directly over many years, and recent as a few months ago, he wants to sell and develop the crud out of the Riverside frontage, but keep the SFR zoning for 1110. Just, question about preserving the neighborhood. Yeah, I see Scott Ibbotson finally was able to get in. He's having a hard time getting into the meeting.
I can
Pardon?
Oh, sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I forgot you were asking.
No definitive explanation has been provided as to what the plans would be for the property if the zoning change is approved. Why not wait until there's an actual plan before applying for the zoning change?
Yeah.
Is it reasonable to just say, trust us?
There are no plans because we're not planning on a new structure on that property.
Okay, and then Maureen addressed the issues about the notification and that the link to the guide to zoning is in there, and that's a resource that we put together. It's a booklet that kind of spells this out so you don't have to dig into the really fine print of the land development code. So at the end of the chat questions, we're going to jump over real quick to Tony House, who's been waiting patiently. So Tony, would you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
Thank you for setting up this meeting. I have a comment and then a question. You stated that the purpose of neighborhood office zoning is to serve the neighborhood. I don't believe that Mr. Schuler's business model is set to serve our neighborhood. How does he propose to serve our neighborhood by changing this to neighborhood office? And the question I have is, under the most recent iteration of Code Next, they've been very clear that the intent of Code Next, or one of the goals of Code Next, is to remove conditional overlays, if not through the entire city, then at least and certainly within the urban core. So my understanding is that any conditional overlay applied to this zoning would be worthless once Code Next passes.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else before I respond?
Well, I can give a little background on that. Is that Ms. House is correct that as when and if the new code is adopted, moving forward, there was not in draft 3 and any of the drafts a provision for conditional overlays. My understanding is that most of the conditional overlays that were put in place during the code development process would be given a placeholder zoning in 25 or something 25.
F25, yeah.
What, pardon me?
F25?
F25, that's right. And that zoning would be there until a future council would take action on a zoning case, or through some kind of planning process that zoning be changed. So conditional overlays that are more recent, like were being developed during the interim time period from the beginning of the process to develop the code to any future adoptive date, would still remain in effect.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And about Codenext, I wasted like 3,000 pages over several different drafts of my life reading Codenext, and after years of that and millions of dollars spent, we're not quite there yet. And it's if and when it passes, I'm not sure. And that being said, like Mark said, it's not like any restrictions would go away necessarily or overnight. I will check on what the most recent iteration of Codenext proposed, but I'm not holding my breath for any Codenext. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. The last person who has their hand raised, has been again waiting patiently, and we appreciate that, is Dan Ferdine. If you could, you've unmuted. Ask your question, Dan.
Yeah, hi, Micah.
Hi.
Yeah, I am Dan Ferdine. Good job getting the name right. I kind of have a couple different questions. The first one is about the usages in office. So that he owns a commercial property right next to this that has a huge amount of land, and I mean, I guess the question is has he run out of office space in there and he needs to use a single family house, which he bought as a single family house in a residential neighborhood for office space. So that's kind of the first point. And then the second point is, you know, the probably the bigger concern of the neighborhood, I think, is about how this affects the Inglewood and Manlove. And you know, it's been said that there would be no access via the streets and no street parking. But I mean, I guess the first part of that is how on earth do you enforce that? And secondly, we're talking about rezoning this one little property. We're not talking about the time insurance tract or any of that. So if this property were rezoned and then it were sold by itself, how would that property exist with no ability to have any parking or any access off of Manlove or Inglewood? That seems like a contradiction to me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the answer to that is it would need to stay part of the larger tract. If we do, enshrine a restriction to not allow vehicular access. So.
Okay. Also, if you look in the chat, Maureen has put up the pages from the guide to zoning that concern neighborhood office, and it has a list of words that Mike has already put up early in his presentation, as well as a list of the uses. So also, I would like to respond to an earlier comment. I think it was from Rachel regarding notification. The Texas Local Government Code requires that municipalities notify individuals owning property within 200 feet of a subject tract. The city of Austin has expanded that for 300 feet for all zoning cases and neighborhood plan amendment cases, and I think as well as for subdivision and site plan cases. So those go out to 500 feet. And granted, if 500 feet is part of I-35, then no, I-35 would not be notified. but that is our statutory requirement is to notify all residents, all organizations whose boundaries fall within that 500-foot buffer, as well as non-resident property folks who may own property but reside elsewhere. So basically anyone with a utility account, anyone who owns property in any organization that falls within that 500-foot buffer surrounding the subject tract is notified for zoning. So
could I quickly respond to Dan's? I know we're getting late. Just want to
no, that's fine. We can go a little bit.
Yeah, I failed to fully respond to your question, Dan. I'm burning the midnight oil here. The question about the huge amount of land, I think you're talking about getting this structure put to a good use versus millions of dollars breaking land, paying for upgrades to water and wastewater lines, and the permitting process and construction process for an additional building. And so those are just two way different animals. And so I think that hopefully answers your question about that. As far as replatting, we're not there yet. It's a premature question for us. I have not looked into it yet.
Okay, we have one person, this might be the last question. Adria Escalante has her hand raised. If you'd unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, it's actually Tony's question. I thought it was a fantastic question. If the intent of an NO is to service or to serve the neighborhood, can you explain how this would actually serve the neighborhood? It sounds like it would only serve the businesses and not the neighborhood.
Right. So, I mean, I think that insurance is something that people everywhere, and including in neighborhoods, need. And when I was referring to the NO description, it talks about a small office use located in or adjacent to a residential neighborhood, and does not reasonably affect traffic, some other requirements. And so that's when I talk about compatibility with or consistency with the intent of the zoning, that's what I'm talking about. And this is for a property that backs up to commercially zoned properties on some of the most major streets in Austin. And I think it makes a lot of sense to make it part of that overall site so it can serve and be good use. And
can I also point out, though, that even though it backs up to on one side to that, on all the other sides, it fronts and sides actual residents. So while you're looking at the picture from one angle of that house, there are a lot of other angles that I think you should look at it from, and all of the other people that it does back up to and face and impact.
Yeah, so looks like the lot, I'm just doing a quick calculation, is 100 feet wide. And so you would only be able to do a structure 25 feet from the SF3 house to the south. And a 25-foot setback from the front. And so I think this is not talking about some gigantic structure, because it's not allowed. A huge office is not allowed under NO zoning. So.
Okay, Maureen, do you want to bring up your contact information? And while Maureen's doing that, any questions that you might have following this, something that pops up while you're drifting off to sleep, you can contact Maureen by email or phone. And like she said at the beginning, excuse me, we can put those questions up and we can have them posted at the website within 5 business days, or more likely the middle of next week. So
yeah, and I'll put my contact information in there as well. If you have any follow-up questions or concerns, I would love to speak to anybody who's willing to speak with me. So that, and if there's somebody I can email my follow-up to that I promise you, please reach out to me so I can get that to you. I think we talked about access via the neighborhood. We're willing to look at restricting that, but I'd be happy to discuss that in more detail.
So on the screen now, you have the contact information for the 2 case managers, Maureen Meredith, with her phone and email, and she's the neighborhood plan amendment, and you advance the slide to the very beginning, Maureen. There we go. And then the zoning case manager is Kate Clark, and there's Kate's email and phone. If you go and look into the chat, I'm going to read your phone number out. It's Micah King. Its phone number is 512-370-3468, or Micah King, which is MICAH.KING at HUSCHblackwell.com. And it's in the chat if you guys want to jot that down right now. And if somehow you missed it, Maureen has that contact information, so you can contact Maureen if you'd like to get in touch with Micah. With that, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your evening, and listening to the case and asking your questions.
What are the next steps?
The next steps would be staff will meet and make a recommendation. The planning commission meeting will be scheduled, the public hearing, and the council meeting public hearing will be scheduled. Everybody who has a utility account, owns property, or an organization whose boundaries fall within the 500 feet surrounding the tract in question, this address on Manlove, will receive notification of those 2 public hearings and how to participate. Because of COVID, it's all being done online, much like this. So you receive that in the mail, and then you'd be able to join, go virtually to the public hearings and provide your input on the cases. Does that answer your question, sir?
Do you have a time frame? Are we talking 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years?
I would have to defer to Maureen on that.
So what will happen is we will wait for the zoning planners to make their recommendation. So I don't have an idea of when that. Then we'll work with the applicant on scheduling the meeting. So it won't be years. And depending on where the zoning staff is, as far as the other departments that also review the application, where they are in the review process. So it's years. I don't know if it will be within a month or 2, but you can certainly reach out to me at any time and ask for a status. And I don't know, Micah had mentioned an offer to meet with y'all, social distanced. So I don't know if we, want to wait to hear from Micah, if those meetings had been scheduled and accomplished, and then move forward. So we'll kind of wait with that process before we start scheduling for Planning Commission and City Council.
Yeah, I mean, in the ideal world, a zoning case from initiation to council fast-tracked is 3 to 4 months generally in a perfect situation, but that's but then it can extend much longer. So I can't. It's really impossible to say how long something's going to take until it happens. Sometimes I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but I've seen zoning cases stretch out for years. I don't think this one shall.
Thank you for the info.
Yeah. So with that, again, thank you for participating. We really appreciate it. And with that, would you all have a nice evening? And I'm going to go eat dinner. So take care, everybody.